In Agile, we always talk about continuous growth, but are we really growing? Yes, we might be studying. Yes, we might be reading. But I'm finding that we're learning the same things over and over from the same voices and the same perspectives. It's time to break free and move the dial on this community that we love and treasure. You want to be able to increase your evangelism skills, your sales and marketing skills, your influence skills, your leadership skills, your confidence, your bravery, your courage, your mental, physical, and emotional awareness. All of these things create a composite of a new breed of leader, and there's only one place to get it. There is nothing else like this on the internet, and believe me, we are focused on being so good that no one can catch us. I want you to click in the show notes below and find the link. Find your way home. Find your way to the Forge. We're waiting for you, and we can't wait to see you in the spring 2021 session. See you there. Guys, real quick intro to a very special episode of the Badass Agile podcast. Today, I bring on Vasco Duarte, an absolute beast in our field, to talk about his Scrum Master Summit and, most importantly, his powerful picture of the future of Scrum Masters and how they impact the way we work in the future. Sit down and get ready for the full ride. You won't want to miss this. That's this week on the Badass Agile podcast. Greetings, team. Welcome to the Badass Agile podcast. I'm your host, Chris Williams. Vasco, you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Legend, Scrum Master toolbox guy, self-described poop disturber. How are you, sir?
I don't know about the disturber part, but certainly there's been I've been involved in my fair share of controversies.
Yeah, that's in North America. That's what we call that. There's a harsher term for it, a less family-friendly term, but I like that about you. That's how I first encountered you, as a no estimate, a hashtag no estimates discussion that was rather heated.
It's still going on.
It's
10 years now, almost 9 years since I made or I had my first public talk about no estimates, and the conversation is still going strong.
Isn't that crazy?
Means there's something there.
Something is going on, but you know what? Here's what I love about you is that you never stop the controversy. So you're not hanging on that one thread. We've got some new things to talk about. That new thing is about the future of the Scrum Master role, and I know you're very passionate about this because the more and more conversations we have, the more and more people enter the field, the more we see some confusion around, is a Scrum Master a coach? Is a coach a different role? Is one better than the other? Is one more essential than the other? And I know you're of this standpoint because you did a blog post recently about how the Scrum Master role is training ground for future CEOs. So I know you have some strong views about the Scrum Master role, what it's meant to do, why it matters, how to do it well. So let me ask you, what's this all about?
So as we are recording this, Chris, I've interviewed 320 plus guests on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. So I've heard a lot of stories. Of course, some things repeat, but every guest has something new to bring. Mm-hmm. And I really cherish those stories. That's why we try to do it in the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. We try to tell stories, real life, what's happening. And there's this trend, right? And the trend that I see in many of the Scrum Masters is that they kind of feel ashamed, and they all want to be Agile coaches, as if, being an Agile coach would be all that is needed to solve all the problems we have at work in our organizations. Of course, that's not the case. The Agile coach is an important role, somebody who works maybe with leadership, somebody who works maybe with the system. But therefore, because they do that, they don't work with the teams every day. And last time I checked, most product companies ship software, not transformation programs. And it's Scrum Masters who work with the teams that ship software.
Absolutely.
And for me, I wanted to create an event. The event is the Scrum Master Summit, which will happen in May. I wanted to create an event around the role of the Scrum Master. So not about Scrum, the framework. That's there. That's defined by the Scrum Guide. And, we all know what it is. And the rules get updated every now and then, but they pretty much stay the same. with some minor changes. But the Scrum Master role is somehow in all of this conversation forgotten. Scrum Master role was created initially in the Scrum framework, and it became kind of the linchpin of the Scrum framework, right? But right now, we don't talk about it that much. We talk about product owners, we talk about the teams, we talk about whatever technical practices we must use, which is great. We need to talk about those things. But we forget that actually the core of this transformation of how we develop products, that's what Scrum was there to do, came about through a very simple change in how hierarchies play the role in managing the work. And that is the introduction of the Scrum Master role completely eliminated the power that comes from hierarchy and transformed that into a role, the Scrum Master role, which should be focusing on collaboration, on getting the right people to talk to each other, on helping teams find their ground and learn and improve on a constant basis to own their process. And that's the Scrum Master role. And for me, and the message that I want to give to Scrum Masters out there is that your role is now, today, to the 10, 12 years onwards from the first publication of the Scrum framework, even more important than it was back then, because the Scrum Master role brings in a new perspective to the world of work. And that's what I described in that article you were referring to. The article is my comments on a podcast with Alan Mulally. Alan Mulally is the ex-CEO of Boeing and Ford. So it's somebody who has given a lot of proof out there in the market that they know what they were doing. And in that podcast that I comment on, he's interviewed about his work at Ford and how he set up his leadership team. And he's describing how he asks questions, how he sees that the team is hesitant to talk about the problems they're facing. Just to give you an example, everybody's scorecard is green, even though Ford is losing $17 billion that year. Mm-hmm. Like, how is that possible, right? And through his Scrum Master Jedi skills, I mean, he doesn't call himself a Scrum Master, but that's what we would call that role in a software team, right? He asks questions, and then when the first direct report shares a problem, shares a red light in the scorecard, he starts clapping, rewarding the courage that team member had to say, hey, here's a problem, can you help me fix it? This is a prime example of what Scrum Masters are doing, or if they aren't, they should be doing out there with teams every day. So my statement here is that we need to get these Scrum Masters together so that the role can extend beyond the Scrum framework and become the original vision of the Scrum framework through the Scrum Alliance way back when, which is to transform the world of work. And I think that the Scrum Master role has the potential to enable that transformation.
So I love that statement. How did we get this wrong? I mean, there's so many books, there's so many courses, certifications that you can get on the Scrum Master role itself. Like, make no mistake, there's eyes on this role. How are we getting this so wrong, in your opinion?
I don't think we're getting it wrong. It's just that we are not seeing what the role is. We are seeing what the Scrum framework is and what the Scrum Master must do in order for the Scrum framework to exist in practice, right? And then we're assigning all of these other responsibilities that are not defined in the Scrum framework to a role, the Agile coach role, right? And this role, the Agile coach, it is a very important role. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's taking the pride we once had to be Scrum Masters, and it's transforming Scrum Masters into people who are shy about the work that they're doing and want to get out of it as soon as possible to become Agile coaches. And that's sad, but it's also a threat. Now, let me share this story with you. One of the major internet retailers in Europe, or e-tailers as they are called, fired all of their Scrum Masters and Agile coaches. And what did they do instead? They rehired the project managers they had once fired a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And here's why. Because the Scrum Masters and Agile coaches in that organization were so consumed by the concept of Agile adoption that they forgot that what they were there to do was to help the company thrive and survive in a difficult moment, to help those teams ship software and become better. And what we ended up was with people who were supposed to help the company do something, but didn't, because they are not responsible for delivery, are they? Right? Scrum Master does not help the teams deliver, does he or she? Well, here's the point. We do. And we do that in a way that is 100 times better than a project manager, which is we help the team take ownership and do things that no project manager in the world would even think about. That's the transformation that needs to happen. That's the original promise of Scrum. And that's what the Scrum Master is there to do, to help their teams deliver value to customer and, of course, to the organization they belong to, because otherwise it doesn't survive. And we do this through something that no other management role in an organization does. We do this through fostering collaboration. This is not what project managers do. This is not the mandate that project managers have. Project managers very famously have the ultimate responsibility for delivering the project. That's not what Scrum Masters do. Scrum Masters help the teams own that responsibility. The teams who do the work, the teams who face the problems, the teams who know what needs to be fixed. And that's a transformation of the world of work. And I think that we as a Scrum Master community, not Scrum community, Scrum Master community, we need to come back and we need to see that vision, establish that vision or modify it as we see fit as a community and start implementing that vision.
Very good. Can we get tactical and talk about some things we could be doing today to help right the boat? To put things back on track. So there are a lot of Scrum Masters who are going to be listening to this. And in my experience, there's experienced Scrum Masters and there's people who are getting into the field now. And the number of people who are getting into the field is very, very big. And they're looking for the how-tos. What do I need to say? What do I need to do? Now, I don't like quick fixes. I don't want to propose that we do that. But can you help orient these folks by giving them a couple of directional pieces? Here are the things you should focus on. Here are the things that you should build/experiment with to try to do exactly what you just said. Make your job focused on the collaboration that enables the team to be accountable for the outcomes.
Well, so the first thing starts with understanding that the role is not responsible for delivery. That is true. But actually, our success depends on that delivery happening. And this is one of the paradoxes of the Scrum Master role, which makes it so powerful, by the way, because it is therefore completely different from a hierarchical management role, right? And when we recognize that our job is to make sure our teams succeed, even though we are not doing the work they do, then we need to come back and say, okay, so what are we missing to be able to do that? Because my goal is not to get my team to use the Scrum framework. In fact, I would argue the Scrum Master role has already transcended the Scrum framework. Well, for once, it is used in other processes. It is not only used in the Scrum framework.
Right.
And then go beyond the process and start understanding, okay, what other conversations am I not having? Right? So I'm helping the teams get value out of the daily Scrum. That's great, but is that helping them deliver? I'm helping the teams resolve conflicts, team members resolve conflicts between themselves. That's great, but are you helping them resolve conflicts with their manager? Mm-hmm. And this is what we need to recognize, is that our role as Scrum Master spreads outside the team as well. Not because we own anything outside the team, not because we want to replace the team taking action, but because we need to understand and we need to be part of those conversations that happen so that we can help the team. And this starts with something simple, and that's what we do in the Scrum Master Summit, hopefully, is setting a vision for what the role is there to do. And our vision is the Scrum Master is a role that will change the world of work. Now, what does that mean in practice? Okay, so the traditional way to look at work is somebody thinks, somebody else does. And the one who thinks tells the one who does what to do, right? That's the separation of thinking and doing. Mm-hmm. Scrum Masters bring those two together. They bring the thinkers and doers together, and they all become doers. They all participate, collaborate in achieving a certain goal, right? Our goal as Scrum Masters and as the Scrum Master community cannot be to implement the Scrum framework. It cannot be that, because we can completely succeed at implementing the Scrum framework and fail at helping the business survive.
Right.
And that, the second one, is more important than the first one. So as Scrum Masters, we need to recognize that Scrum, just like everything else, is a tool. And we use it for what it's good at: highlighting impediments, at showing where the tensions are, at keeping people accountable to themselves, especially teams accountable to themselves. But then we need to go beyond that, and we need to say, okay, what else is missing, right? And for example, a very simple example is we need to work with product owners every day. It is not the job of the product owner to know how to help the team succeed. It is the job of the product owner to know how to help the product succeed, and together, the team and the product owner figure out how they work together with our help. We need to help the product owner to acquire the skills and the tools that are needed to work with an agile team. If a product owner isn't able to break down a story into smaller stories, they're not going to help the team succeed. That's our job. We need to help the product owner. But at the same time, we also need to tell the team that our job is to make the product succeed. So let's not look at this as a technology project. Let's look at this as a make your customer happy project. Mm-hmm. And let's decide what we can do right now, given what we know, in order to get closer to that, right? Like all of this is about generating conversation and collaboration among the key actors in our organizations. And that's why I want to emphasize that the vision is really to change the world of work. And that's what we should take on as Scrum Masters. It is not Scrum adoption that will happen because it works. It is transforming the world of work, helping our team succeed, helping our organization succeed.
So for a transformation like this to take root, it has to start with the messaging that we send out when we start new initiatives, especially in organizations that are just beginning to adopt Scrum. There's a big opportunity there to change the language so that we can change the perception. Everything I heard you say, which is so brilliant, and I love all of it, is that we have allowed ourselves to get boxed in as Scrum Masters into simply being what I always called the Sherpa through the mountains, the someone who guides a team through the Scrum process. But you're saying that if that was ever true, you can argue that or not, it's elevated now. We should feel the burden of responsibility to grow it, to evolve it, because Scrum's been around for a quarter century now. So it's really time to look at it, see where the shortcomings are, which is exactly what you've done. Do you have any advice for a new Scrum Master? Or sorry, not for a new Scrum Master, but for someone who is explaining Agile for the first time to teams and organizations, for people who are selling agility, for anyone responsible for explaining it? What are some of the things that you would boil down to describe what is the Scrum Master? Because people always ask that question. What's their role? We don't want to say it is the Scrum expert anymore. We want to say something different. What would you advise?
So Scrum Master is, in my own terminology, and I wrote a blog post about this, is the expert in the domain of collaboration. We do in product development, and most organizations that use Scrum, not all, but most organizations that use Scrum are in knowledge work environment, right? It's a completely different type of work. And in that kind of environment, the knowledge work environment, collaboration is the basis for the work to be done. Because the work is never fully understood by anyone. Everybody understands a little bit more about some specific area. And it's when we bring all of those people together that the work happens. The manager no longer is the person who understands the work the best. And that's very easy to understand. Anyone that's been 5 years without typing on the keyboard or opening up an IDE or running a test tool knows that they very quickly forget how the work is done in practice. And technology evolves so fast that the people doing the work, the developers, the testers, the UX people, the people doing that work, they will learn so much in those 5 years that they will completely surpass the ability of any manager to follow what they're doing. Otherwise, they wouldn't be good managers. Mm-hmm. So the manager also plays a very important role in any organization. And, we can talk about some of those being more valuable or less valuable, but those are there. Those are consequence of how we structure our organizations. So who's looking at the collaboration between the team members and between team and external participants in that creation? Who's doing that? It's not the manager. It's not the product owner. It's not the team themselves. They're too consumed by the day-to-day work to be able to do that. So who's doing that? The thing is, without collaboration, there is no work that is successful except by accident. And, some teams are really good at being heroes and going the extra mile and working weekends and so on to be successful. But that's not a great example of collaboration. That's a great example of self-sacrifice, right? So I would say for Scrum Masters out there, we need to bring our attention back to the core of our role, which is to help others succeed. And we do that by helping them collaborate. And that's why I like that interview with Alan Mulally that I talk about in my post so much, because that's how he saw his role as a CEO. His role as a CEO was to establish the base upon which his team, the leadership team at Ford, could succeed. Not him, but his team could succeed, because he understood that I can't go and tell them what to do. I don't know. I come from an airline company or an airplane company. I don't know how to build cars. I don't know how to create networks to distribute cars. I don't know how to run car manufacturing lines. I can't tell them what to do. So what do? I help them collaborate. And this is what we should be doing as Scrum Masters. And that would be my call to action to all Scrum Masters out there, is refocus your attention. I mean, don't forget Scrum. That's still there and it's still valuable. But refocus your attention on being a great enabler of collaboration in your team and in your organization.
Wonderful. I would argue that requires a new set of skills that maybe weren't as necessary 10 years ago. So I'll ask you a two-part question. What do you believe those skills are? But also, if you were interviewing a Scrum Master, someone saying, I'm thinking of becoming a Scrum Master, or I already am one, when you ask the question, why are you a Scrum Master? Why do you want to be a Scrum Master? What kinds of answers would turn on a light in your head that says this person has got what is required to be that expert in the art of collaboration that you're looking for?
Yeah, so there's a phrase that one of the guests on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast once told me. He was a tuba player. I don't know if the listeners know a lot about music, but tuba players are not the solo players. They are not the ones standing in front of the orchestra or the jazz quartet or whatever that might be. Mm-hmm. They are the ones in the background, and they are the ones establishing kind of the musical landscape upon which the solo players can excel and shine. And that's really what we do, right? We are the ones putting the melody in the background so that the team can shine. And that's what I say when we talk about collaboration. What do you need to learn? You need to learn to step back. You need to learn to help others succeed. And that's not easy. There's great examples in the sports world where coaches are incredibly successful, but they are also very good at standing back. But there's not many of those there either. A lot of coaches that are successful have no problem coming forward and taking the credit. But Scrum Masters can't do that because they are actually not shipping the product. It's the teams they work with that are shipping the product. But what they can do is they can be proud of the teams they help succeed. And I mean, you see immediately when you go into a room where there's a Scrum Master and a team and they're working on something together, you immediately see if that Scrum Master is able to help a team succeed. And in an interview, I would say people who tend to talk a lot about themselves, talking a bit about yourself, that's perfectly okay, and that's actually natural. But when you're interviewing somebody for a Scrum Master and they talk about themselves and they don't talk about the teams they've worked with, there's a problem there. Mm-hmm. Because that should be the first point of attention for a Scrum Master, is the team. Right. And how do I help this guy succeed? That should be the question.
So we want to move people more from a me focus to either a we focus or even better, an it/us focus, right? So from the individual to the team, then to the organization, and ultimately the client needs to be their primary focus.
Absolutely. So I think that's a great way to put it kind of in a nutshell. For me, it is about recognizing that our success depends on other people's success. Our success is their success. And by the way, we need to bring that culture to the companies we work at, because the success of the products we create is the success of the customers. And here's another example in which the Scrum Master perspective on the world of work is so key, so important. It's not about making a product more beautiful. It's about making a customer more awesome. That's what this is about.
Now, in the reality of the landscape of navigating, you mentioned big companies like automotive or aircraft. These are big companies with a lot of people in them, with a lot of well-established, entrenched positions and attitudes, and people who have tied their ego to their title, to their level. A Scrum Master in the domain that you describe, someone who's an art and the expert of collaboration, who is we/us focused rather than me focused. So no more star attitude. You're the tuba player, not the lead, the lead violinist or whatever you would call it in an orchestra. You're not the soloist. This requires a certain amount of courage. So even though this is a we role where it is supporting other people and their success and their ability to deliver and highlighting their capabilities and bringing people together, it's a collaborator, it's an orchestrator, it's a conductor to a point. This must require courage, though, because you're talking about going out and dealing with those entrenched positions and ideas and ideals. That is a form of influence, sometimes argument, sometimes resistance and pushback. What are some of the qualities that are required to be a collaborator that may not be in the Scrum Guide?
Yeah, that's a good point. So when we talk about transformation or we talk about change, and I mean, I'm not an expert in car or airplane companies, so I'm going to talk about software companies where I've worked but even in small software companies, I can see those entrenched positions, this unwillingness to change, because not just because of the status quo, of course, because of the status quo being, productive and beneficial for that particular person, but also because in any organization of any reasonable size, a dynamic seems to emerge, which is that people start to work as if the only goal is the perpetuation of the organization, right? And I like to quote the Ghostbusters, right? When something starts to smell, and not literally, but when something starts to smell, who you gonna call? Mm-hmm. And you're gonna call the Scrum Masters, because they are the ones that can work with that. What are you going to do with entrenched positions? Get an even higher manager to do something? To get silent opposition? No, you want people to collaborate. And also, the only way they're going to collaborate is when you take the focus away from my status into what are we doing together, right? And one of the key skills of a collaborator is to bring people together around the goal they define. So help them define the goal first. And who you're going to call when you need that? You're going to call a Scrum Master, because that's what we do all the time, every day. That's what we try to do. How do we resolve conflicts? We help team members step back from the emotions and step into a shared goal, right? That's how we do it. So I think that we have it's not that we have the skills, but the Scrum Master role as an expert in the domain of collaboration has the right perspective work-wise, and talking about hierarchy and power and influence and leadership. We have that perspective. We have the perspective of the leader that has no authority. We have the perspective of the person who wants to bring people together. We have the perspective of the person who wants to help others have that conversation that is so hard to have sometimes, which is, when you adopt Agile, some roles might disappear.
Right. Now, when people hear that, you've got to have hard conversations, influencing conversations, healing conversations, however you like to phrase it. This is where it dovetails into, if people say, I'm not really good at that, and I don't really want that kind of conflict or that kind of disagreement. I know what it feels like and I don't want it. But now let's go back to how those skills in this role is the proving and breeding ground for future CEOs. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, can you imagine a role that has more conflicts on their desk than the CEO role? Because all of the conflicts bubble up to the CEO role. Like, could you imagine a CEO that is unable to deal with conflict? Right? So I think, if you want to have the right environment to train a CEO in being a CEO, put a Scrum Master in a tough position, and they'll learn to be a CEO. Now, I do want to be careful here because some people have told me that, CEO is more like the product owner, CEO must know about finances. And I'm like, I don't think so. I mean, I know a lot of CEOs that come from a tech background. They're not experts in finance. I know also a lot of CEOs that come from HR. I also know CEOs that come from financial background, finance, and that's okay, right? But that's the technical domain of their expertise. That's not the CEO domain of their expertise. Right. The CEO domain of their expertise is how do you make a large, loosely coupled group of people come together to deliver something that is bigger than all of them.
Right.
You need to have certain skills, and CEOs, we call it charisma, we call it whatever, right? But those skills are there, and those skills you develop as a Scrum Master.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about that developing of skill, because I'm not sure that they teach you this stuff. I'm fond of saying the stuff they don't teach you in Scrum Master school. These are specialized skills. I highly believe and tell everyone, if you want to learn the Scrum Master craft, I'm not joking, you need to go check out Vasco. And I'm not saying they have to study every word that you say, but I think they need to listen to your content and have it as that supporting, surrounding yourself with inspirational thoughts and aspirational values and confident leaders in the space so that you can unlearn what you've learned and have the courage to think differently, to formulate your own position of passion. What matters about what I do as a Scrum Master? Why do I want this job? How does this heal, help, or build things that I'm interested in healing, helping, or building? So where would you suggest that people go to get some of this inspirational content and context? Where did you learn this stuff? Who inspires you, and who are you most closely aligned to?
Yeah, so this is a great question. Everybody has their own journey. So let me put that out there. And my journey is not your journey. But what's inspirational for me, of course, is listening to people who are dealing with these problems every day, like, interviews with CEOs, interviews with people like Scrum Masters that are solving real problems in the world of work. I've studied a lot about facilitation. I've studied a lot about coaching. I did my own psychotherapy. I mean, all of that stuff has helped me, because one of the difficult jobs of being a Scrum Master is that you have to learn to be quite self-aware, because you don't want to project your thoughts into the team, and you need to know what your thoughts are. Like, we need to train that as an example. But if I would say one of the most important inspirations in my journey has been Edward Deming's work. And for those of you who don't know him, he is kind of let's call it the grandfather or the godfather, whichever word you prefer, of Lean. Now, he didn't come up with Lean. He was a very nagging old guy, and he was sent to Japan from the US after the Second World War, because probably the US CEOs couldn't listen to him anymore. Of course, I'm being a bit ironic here. But anyway, he was sent off to Japan to help the US effort to reconstruct the Japanese industry, which was, of course, not an easy thing to do. And you go into a country that has very little resources, that have been just decimated by war. What can you do? And the work that he did there, which ultimately led to many of the quality movements that we now recognize as the origins of Lean and Lean product development, Lean manufacturing, were started by him and another guy, Schubert, by the work that they did in preparation for the war effort of the Second World War. And that story, the reason why I want to bring that up, first of all, there's a lot of inspiring things that he says, and he is kind of, a curmudgeon. He will complain about how people don't really understand what's going on, and you need to develop this system of deep understanding, and, most people don't even understand what they are managing, et cetera, et cetera. So, put your filters on. But the reason why I bring this story up is that these were people who were working in extremely rough conditions, extremely difficult situations. And instead of, getting disheartened and stopping, they just went and created new knowledge. They developed new perspectives that brought us today some of the most important knowledge we have in terms of process management. So For me, that's very important. Going back to the roots of lean and understanding what people were going through at that time that led them to discover this, because we are going through very similar things, right? And this is also one of the reasons why I say Scrum Masters must transcend Scrum. Like learning about lean, I think, should be one of the key aspects of any Scrum Master journey.
Yes.
But so is learning about coaching. So is learning about facilitation.
I agree. And you've said something very important there, because it is important to note that it's these kinds of initiatives and perspectives that change the industry. You know, we don't tend to think of ourselves as at the same level as the people who invented Agile and Scrum. We put them in an elevated position, but in my view, they were probably just people who saw a problem, saw a disconnect, and ruthlessly worked on solutions to the point where they went from being invisible to unavoidable, because the ideas had been honed and refined to a point where this works. This really improves things, and we learn that by testing it. So it's important for everyone out there to understand that all of these podcasters and people who are out in the community trying to make the community better are really the future of agility. So I want to talk about your upcoming event. What can you tell us about what to expect and when it is and how people can get involved?
Yeah, so we're organizing the Scrum Master Summit. There's a team of us working on that, and we're putting together an event with 7 tracks. We will have 7 or 8 at the time as we record this. We have 7 scheduled keynotes. Guys like Al Shalloway going back to the origins of Agile and the origins of Lean and putting those together. Al Shalloway was one of the hosts of one of my favorite podcasts, Net Objectives podcast. I don't remember anymore what the title was. It Lean Conversations or something like that. Anyway, Net Objectives podcast, way back when. Great podcast. Learned a lot from that. He's talking about the new Scrum game, bringing new ideas to Scrum and challenging the status quo of Scrum. Jeff Watts, who wrote the Scrum Mastery book, he's looking at the future of the Scrum Master role. Inspiring stuff. And Lisette is going to talk to us. Lisette Sutherland of Collaboration Superpowers fame is going to talk to us about remote facilitation, which is one of the key skill sets for Scrum Masters. I think the most important thing for me, though, is that we will have a lot of live sessions that are designed to help Scrum Masters network with other Scrum Masters, to meet their peers, to learn from their stories, and of course, to ask questions and grow their network. Because I think one of the most important aspects of this event is to bring this community together, the Scrum Master community together, so that we are not ashamed of being a Scrum Master. In fact, we could all get a T-shirt saying "I am a Scrum Master" when we show up on the conference. Maybe I'll start that because that's what we should be proud of. It's a very important role, and it's a role that can transform the world of work.
And I hope all you Scrum Masters out there are hearing that. Now, I have a suggestion or proposal that I think might help. If you can think of what an MVP would be for getting not just the message about the conference out or the event, but the core messages. So I would love to have some of these things recorded, either live broadcast or put up as a podcast after the fact. But I would also love to summarize somehow what were the key takeaways, the big learnings, and what the audience found were the most inspiring and critical ideas that we need to move forward with immediately as a community so that we can help spread it and help move this into the field. So let's you and I continue to work on how we can promote and get this message into the community. So I'm thrilled to be involved with it and to have you on the show to talk about it. So anything I can do to serve you in the cause, please let me know. Let's do something fun together. Let's MVP it so that it's not extra work on your plate, because I know you and I are both crazy busy, which is a word I hate to use, but it's true. We're involved in a lot of things. So what are the incremental things that I can do that would add a ton of value? Let's continue that conversation. But I want to thank you for doing it, first of all, for putting it on, because I'm sure it's a ton of work for everyone involved. I'm excited to be part of it. I think it's a wonderful idea. I'm inspired just thinking about it, and I'm inspired by your position, by your constant forging into new territory. It's a bit like Canada. Most of the Canadian population exists at the border of the US, but we have all of this unused territory to the north of us, and there are places you can go where we don't even have roads yet. Everything is just pure forest, all this natural beauty, but we have to go and explore those things and know them and endeavor and learn about our own country as being, something other than Toronto and Vancouver and, a handful of small cities and Tim Hortons donuts. So Canadians, I think, get where you come from in a very, very natural way. So thank you for your passion. Thank you for your time also. And I look forward to what's next. Can you just give us the URLs or where people can best find you on the web?
Yeah. So if you want to know more about the Scrum Master Summit, it is at scrummastersummit.org, all one word. And you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Vasco Duarte and you will find me on LinkedIn.
Excellent. So I'll have some links in the show notes to make it easy for people to find. Vasco, thank you very much. I look forward to the next one.
Thank you, Chris, for having me. And I hope we can get you on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast too.
I'll be there. Thank you, my friend. Great to see you.